the most important area on the entire tactical battlefield. More important than Sumy, more important than Kharkiv, more important than the Zaporizhia, and that is Pokrovsk. If Pokrovsk falls, then I think that the whole defense could become unhinged. I think this is right now the fight for the entire war, because if you win this one, I think everything else can get rolled up, and you're going to see why in this small clip.
Because on the 27th of June, Ukraine's commander-in-chief Alexander Syrsky reported that Russia is concentrating its largest group of personnel in that direction, a force numbering 110,000 troops. That's 50% more than the entire British ground forces. Let that sink in for a second. Oh yeah, remember what I said in one of my last videos about Pokrovsk. But there's a second option for the Russian army. That is to jump on the defensive mode around Pokrovsk, while they shift their focus on the eastern side of the city. From there, they could push an open field towards the large urban area of Novo-Ekonomichne, from where they could start a grinding battle, house by house, towards Pokrovsk. This is exactly what is happening right now. Just kidding, it's actually worse. At the moment, the situation is critical because between 20 and 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers are facing encirclement. Starting in May, the Russian armed forces opened a breach along the TO-504 highway and now hold a 35-kilometer salient east of Pokrovsk. We can talk of an operational masterpiece, and you'll understand why in a minute. The Russians are wielding a big bulge that they could swing in any direction. As we speak, Russian storm detachments are currently carrying a wide flanking maneuver westwards. I'll make another video with more details about this operation. But what you have to understand right now is how the Russians are not getting bogged down in street-by-street battles. Instead, they're simply bypassing these urban areas. And by doing so, they also bypass most of Ukraine's strongholds. The operational objective of this Orc doctrine seems to be Rodinske. That was a situation in that sector on June 1st, plus 9 kilometers in a month. It's absolutely insane. The first step will be to take control of the Kazeni-Tariets River, as well as the villages of Raziny, Novotarietske, Mayak, and maybe even Novo-Ekonomichne. Then comes this set of industrial areas and mines that can act as tactical bulwarks for Ukraine. At last, if the Russians thrust even deeper all the way to the Golden Point, they'll reach the TO-515 road and the settlement of Radinske.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you on a map why that's critical in just a minute. But first of all, actually, let me show you on a map that area and why this is all important, how it's all tied together. You have the in the northern here, that video that Gareth showed you at the outset here from the strike last night. That's right here in Chuhiv, in this area here. There's Kharkiv right here, and this is the location of where that struck. And it was in an industrial section here, which had been used as a logistics hub for the defense for the Ukraine side of the Kharkiv area. That's been here for well over a year and a half up here. And then this new one that's been coming in here where the Russians are now starting a new penetration into the Kharkiv Oblast. And now then they've hit this area back here, and they've been doing the same thing in other places. This is just the most dramatic images that we've had that we're able to show. But you see that Russia up in the northern part of the Eastern Front is now starting to make more and more inroads here. And you see these penetrations are starting to go deeper into the Ukraine side here. Now, on top of this, there's been additional operations here, especially in the Volchansk area. And you see these two, they're starting to expand this bridgehead a little bit. At the same time, they're expanding these two white areas here are just from last night, which I think we told you in our last tactical update. So they're continuing to expand that. So you see Russia's putting pressure all across the front line in these areas, all here. And that if Russia continues to push forward in here, another uncertainty for the Ukraine side. Will they push in here and then expand along these penetrations here to cut off this whole arc right here on the northeastern part? Or will they push forward in the Volchansk area in here and to move toward these this city here, which is kind of along the reservoir, which could then also isolate the entire area? So we don't know, but Russia is successfully moving up, and the Ukraine side is not able to stop them. Now let's run down to the Pokrovsk area and why it's so vital. Because Russia is doing this kind of action up here, and because even in the Sumy area, where the Russians have come down after they retook the Kursk area. So that's continuing. That you see that they're continuing to have fights here, even though Russia's not making a lot of progress in this particular area, but the fight's going on. The fight's going on here in the Kharkiv area, now a new one, and then in the Kupiansk area, also up here. That means that Ukraine can't move reserves from down here up into there. And now we get into the issue of Pokrovsk. And now you may recall that toward the end of last year, from, I don't know, September, October of 2024 through the end of the year, there was a big push where the Russians had pushed on. They took Selidova and then all these other towns, Shevchenko, they moved up, and it looked like they were going to move straight onto Pokrovsk. And at that time, the Ukraine side did move a lot of reinforcements down, and they beefed up their defenses here and brought this, at least the frontal assault, to pretty much halt. And then Russians said, okay, let's maybe go around the flank. So they started moving in this direction. Again, Ukraine moved in some reinforcements. They built some more defensive fortifications. And now then there's positional warfare going on here, but not a lot. Well, it appears then that Russia has put for priority on going in from the flank up here. And you just saw Alex talk about Rodinsky and why that's so important. So here's the fortress city of Pokrovsk. And then you also heard him talk about how Russia is learning tactically, and why I say that they are prioritizing tactical advancements and to defend and limit their casualties. So they're not going into a lot of these urban areas and built-up areas and taking it block by block and house by house, as they have in some of the other areas and they have done in the past. Now they're bypassing a lot of those and just isolating them and moving forward. So now then that causes obviously a lot less casualties for the attackers, because now that in some of these urban areas, if you bypass them and you don't spend the troops, you have to rest out the defenders house by house, room by room, you just move past it and cut off the resupply. Now then you put the defenders in a position where they either run out of ammunition and weapons and money, food and even water. And then they have to either withdraw or they are surrounded and they have to surrender. So that's what Russia is prioritizing right now. And you see then how close, even since Alex made that film, now then here in this, they've actually moved into this village right here, and you see this penetration moving straight toward Rodinsky. He mentioned the road there that would have, and why that was. Let me show you why that's so important. If Russia is able to move the remaining distance right here and take Rodinsky, then they're going to have this main route that's going to be cut off here for resupply. That's going to then leave only this one over here to reinforce the whole city of Pokrovsk. If once Russia has this, then you can see this whole area is in a cauldron here. And according to what the information that Alex has found, that's somewhere around 20,000 Ukrainian soldiers are in there. And I would imagine that Russia, once they get to and take Rodinsky and cut off this road here, then they would probably turn back again to the pressure here to move and to try to cut off this one. Once these two roads are cut off, there is virtually no way that the Ukrainian side can keep its 20,000 troops fed and ammunition and all the things that they would need just to continue providing defense. And they would basically choke it off. If this gets taken here, folks, this could literally roll up the entire defense for the Ukraine side. Just imagine if this whole thing is taken here. Remember, we talked to you about an operation in the Zaporizhia area here where Russia is also putting pressure on in this particular area here, moving up to try to cut off the rail bridge or the rail lines from Zaporizhia also to Pokrovsk. But if this one gets cut off here, now then Russia can move its other troops either to this area in the south or back up into the Kharkiv area in the north, and you see things keep getting rolled up. But if they actually have a breakthrough here, and we've shown you some comments here from just earlier in this week that Russia has apparently large numbers of reserves that have not yet been employed, and some of them are in the northern part of the country, up in the Belarus area. Some are in the other parts of their occupied zones here. Some are actually in the Russian areas. But if they get a breakthrough, they can very rapidly move folks by rail and road networks into this area, and then they can exploit those pretty rapidly. Russia has big reserves. Ukraine doesn't. So especially if you lose a 20,000 person accommodation, you can see that it's not much longer. So it could well be, this is again goes back to what President Trump is reported to have said to Zelensky on his phone call, that listen, the end is coming in now in sight. missiles or no missiles, all I can do is slow down the air attacks. That's the best that we can get done. If we don't do anything and we just keep on with the fiction, you see that the Russian onslaught is continuing. This is the continuation of their summer offensive. They have the resources, they have the ammunition, they have the weapons, they have the weapon systems, they have the personnel, they have the air capability, they have the air defense. There has been also overnight some attacks on the Russian side of the line, where Ukraine is also doing its best to interdict onto the Russian ability to enforce, especially in the Kharkiv area, where they're trying to, where they're having that offensive. The Ukraine side is trying with their drones and missiles to also interdict, and some of those are getting through. There was an attack in Saratov and Ingles Air Base overnight, which had struck some targets, but there are too few of them. They don't have the ability to launch a wave of 500 in 2 out of 3 nights, and then in another large one, and to maintain that. The Ukraine side can't do it. And you see that if anyone wants to get hope from that Ukraine is doing that, well, you have to look at what's happening on the Ukraine side when Russia does have overwhelming capabilities in the air. It's diminishing Ukraine's ability, but it's not knocking them out of the war. And if you see that on the vastly larger Russian landmass, and you see that you have a tiny fraction of the number of missiles and drones that can get through and cause damage, you can understand why that's not going to knock Russia out of anything. And that's been going on for 3 years, and especially here in the last, say, 9 months or 6 months or so, Ukraine has really stepped up its attempt to attack into Russia, and they've had some success. But you see, it has no impact on the front, because Russia has calculated that into their operation. And that's how wars work. You get hit, and you just have to work around it. But Russia has so many more assets, and that's why we keep getting back to you time after time. This is a war of attrition, and the expectation is, in a war of attrition, I'm going to get hit. I'm going to lose some troops. I'm going to lose some assets and some facilities on my side, but it's the side that has the most capability to do it to the other side that's going to end up winning the war. And right now, there is no question that Russia is on the ascendancy, meaning they're still improving. The balance is continuing to move out of whack against the Ukraine side and for the Russian side. And it could be, and I certainly hope that it is, that President Trump is finally coming to acknowledge this, and he's setting the stage to say, hey, this is Biden's war, it's not mine, so I'm going to get out of it. So he's going to try and deflect any blame for it by putting it on the previous administration. He's trying to make this deal with Zelensky. And again, we could know within 10 days whether that's true or not, because if he signs an extension of the moratorium of the martial law, then either that wasn't the case with what was reported, or that Zelensky is just not going to be willing to do anything. And then it'll be interesting if they do extend it. Then what will we see Trump do? Because he may go back to what he was starting to do in April and just walk away. Don't know whether he will or not, but those are some of the things that we're going to be watching for, and those are some indicators as to where this may be going. But hear me clearly, if the Western/Ukraine side continues to ignore reality and continue to pretend like it's business as usual, and we can actually have business and making plans for all this kind of stuff without addressing the elephant in the room, or the bear in this case, that's continuing to advance up here. And you see that even the linchpin of all this defense, the Pokrovsk area, is increasing damage. And Gary, I had sent you a full screen. I don't remember if we talked about it. If you have that on there, it shows the amount of territory being lost by the month. Do we have that one handy? I didn't talk about it, and see if we have it loaded up. If not, we'll just continue to go on with it. Or even if I remember to send it. Sorry, I was kind of in a hurry getting ready for this show this morning. But you can just see graphically what's happening with how much territory is being lost just in 2025. And if I didn't send it, Gary, I think I might be able to pull that one in myself. Let me do that for us real quick, because it is kind of important to see. Because when you see this graphically put on there, it kind of throws things into a lot more relief, that you can say, oh yeah, I mean, this is not just claims. This is actually what's happening. And here this is right here. This is 2025 by the month. And you see that in January, they still were taking a fair amount. It had come down a little bit since November, the previous November, and then it reached a low in March, but only a low, didn't go away. And then it started picking back up in April. then more than double that in May, then up to 556 square kilometers of territory taken by Russia. And then now here we are in July, where it's apparently on the same trajectory and may actually increase. And you can see just in that, especially in that short clip I showed you there from Alex from History Legend, he was showing you in just 30 days how much territory had been lost, 9 kilometers in that area. And that's the most important area here. So that shows you where Russia's putting its priority. So you can understand that's their priority of effort. That is what they consider to be the main effort of their operations in the special military operation right now. And Ukraine recognizes it, but so far they haven't been able to stop it. They can slow it down, but they can't stop it. And that also reinforces something we showed you on July 1st from Julian Rupka, where he admitted that, listen, the big problem is the weak spot that he said the Russians seem to have discovered is that the Ukraine side just doesn't have enough density of men. They have like 12 men over a kilometer or something like that. I can't remember the exact terminology, but he said that there's just too few of them. There's too few in a village, so Russia can just take them one after another. And now you see it graphically playing out on the battlefield. This is the truth, folks. I know a lot of people who are, all for Ukraine and are big defenders of what they is and don't like Russia. I can understand why people would think all those things and why you may have that viewpoint. But there does come a point to where you have to acknowledge reality, even if it's something that you detest, even if it's something you loathe, that you gnash your teeth, to continue to go towards your preferred outcome, to continue having a policy based on a narrative, means that the people that you say that you care about and that you want to succeed will continue to die unnecessarily. They will continue to die in large numbers. They will continue to lose ground. Everything that the defenders of Ukraine say they want to accomplish, they are perversely enabling them to lose. Because if they took the ugly deal that's been on the table for a while now, the killing can stop. President Trump is right. The killing can stop. The loss of territory can stop. It's going to come at a high price, especially politically. No question about it. That's just a fact. But to resist that, to refuse to do that and say, no, that's surrendering. That's rewarding aggression. I hear this all the time. They've been saying it really from the beginning. Anytime somebody talks about a negotiated settlement, you'll be rewarding aggression. And then they'll just keep coming. That's a theoretical situation. I'm talking about what is real. And the cost to people following that path and saying, no, we can't do this because it'll reward aggression, then what you are doing is that you are imposing a cost, an irrecoverable cost on the very people that you say you want to defend. Because by going toward this unobtainable objective of not rewarding aggression, so-called, then you reward the aggressor by saying you can keep going because we won't stop of our own accord, and you'll keep killing everybody in your path. You'll keep destroying all these cities in the path, and they'll take more and more territory. And then it won't be 4 oblasts, folks. It won't be the 4 regions that are apparently still on the table. It will be 6, 8, maybe 10, maybe all the way to the Dnieper River. And if even that doesn't cause the Ukraine side to give, then they may then also put siege to Kiev. And this time for real. The first time they did it in February 2022, it was just a show of force, really. And they just hoped that the presence of tanks and all this kind of stuff would scare the Ukraine side into surrendering. I think that was their intention. That was their plan A. They weren't resourced for plan B. We'll talk about that another day, have in the past. But if they come back this time, folks, there will be a plan B, and it will be resourced ahead of time. And you see them building up right now. Julian Rupka also talked that somewhere between 12 and 15 divisions of Russian combat power are being built through the remainder of planned on the remainder of 2025. That could be a big indicator that Russia is also planning on this. Russia may be physically planning and resourcing an operation that says, we don't think that Zelensky's going to do the right thing, or he's going to do the logical thing, maybe a better way to put it, and that they're resourcing and preparing, and that includes ammunition of all the different categories, drones, artillery shells, air defense missiles, air offense missiles, etc., glide bombs, the whole thing, for a big showdown in the first part of 2026. They may be doing that. And if you see those resources and those are real, then that increases even more the rational logic to say, let's bring this to an end. Let's shut this down now before it gets too further and you lose the whole country, because that's That's entirely possible. Let's hope it doesn't get to that. Let's hope that what President Trump is doing is bringing an end to this right now, ushering in an ugly defeat for the Ukraine side, but ends the killing and stops the forward progress of the Russian military. That's probably the only thing that can stop the Russians at this point. We'll see what happens. We may not have to wait very long. Like I said, maybe about 10 days or so. But in the meantime, we're going to keep you updated every day as we hear anything new, if we see any new information. But we're giving you the truth, folks. If it's the truth you don't like, but it is the truth, because we're unintimidated and uncompromised, and we'll continue to bring this to you as it happens. Be sure and stick with us, though. Like always, we bring you any breaking news that happens over the rest of the weekend or so. We got a great week for you lined up next week. We're going to have Doug McGregor, Jacques Beau, who I hadn't had on for a while, and I'm really eager to get him back on. Patrick Henningsen, Commodore Steve Jeremy, Larry Johnson, and a few others we're trying to nail down too. But in any case, it's going to be a great week. Look forward to seeing you then on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.